Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelis here with a review of the Finisher Super Transform Rider Series 1. These are a somewhat cheaper alternative to the Final Form Ride toys and are another part of the fun pastime I've been having with Bandai Mini Pla, or candy toys. One thing to note right before we begin is that on these toys I did use a couple of the stickers that had, printed detail on them, but I also replaced some of the stickers with some kind of crappy Gundam marker jobs, and I did some more Gundam markering all over the place to bring out detail on these guys. That said, before I talk about the toys, let's see what you get in a box of these. The Hisatsu Chou Henkei Rider set comes in a fairly, boring brown box, which I actually found kind of amusing. When you open it up, what you get inside are multiples. As you can see, you basically get 2 full sets of the foursome. And then you also get a bonus Decade and a bonus Ryuki for whatever reason. So if you want to split this with a friend, you'll have enough for 2 people and you'll have a spare Decade and Ryuki, if you have a friend who just likes one or the other of those. Now to see what's in the individual boxes, one interesting thing to note is that these are called candy toys for a reason. When you pop one of these open, you get a whole bunch of stuff. Oddly enough, you actually get an instruction manual on the inside of the box, so you can actually disassemble the box to see what you're supposed to do with the toy. But you also get a nondescript Japanese sugar pill. This is the candy that makes these into candy toys, and it's ever so delectable. The toy itself comes in a segmented little plastic baggie, and comes with a fairly comprehensive sticker sheet, although I did mix the stickers with some paint jobs, as you saw before. To see what the other ones look like, this is Ryuki. He comes in a long bag. Kiva! Oddly enough, Kiva's sticker sheet comes separate from the baggie. Also, you'll see a lot of things are on sprues, so you do have to clip them off. And if you want, even file them off. You can make this as model kit as you want. And finally, Decade. It comes in a fairly simple little setup here, kind of like the Motion Revives. At the end of that, you basically have this enormous pile of stuff, but when you organize it all, unpainted, these guys admittedly don't look impressive at all. The stickers do help, but the stickers still don't bring everything out. The stickers make them look basically like what you paid for, which is okay, but to be honest, I really prefer the way they look when just a little bit of paintwork is done. Now, the thing is, I'm not a very good painter. I'm a very amateurish painter. I use Gundam markers. I mean, that really says it all. And it only took me like a couple hours, and it was just something to do at my desk while I was watching things, or, waiting for stuff to encode. So it's not a lot of work, but with just a little bit of extra TLC and tender love and care, you can see the difference between the 2 Decades alone, and the stickers do not bring out all this white. A lot of this white, I actually looked for a photo online of Decade so I could see what he's supposed to look like, and it really is all there. It's all sculpted. It's just something you have to bring out yourself. And you can see it makes a big difference in making these toys look a lot more than what they're actually worth. Because when you break it down, they're about $4 a piece. And this looks like a $2 toy. With the stickers, it looks like a $4 toy. This, to me, looks more like a $6 toy. So that's like $2 of value for my 18 hours plus of work. Anyway, I'll show you what some of the other ones look like in comparison. Kuga is another one that benefits incredibly from some paint work. The base version of him is incredibly black. And a lot of this red is actually added in with stickers on the forearms, but on the knuckle guards it isn't. The kneecaps are actually stickers because they are printed into 2 colors and they're shiny, which helps. Generally, he does get to look a lot like this when he's stickered up, but the silver parts are not stickered at all on the Go-Room parts, and on his legs a lot of this silver isn't stickered, just a little bit on the sides. So he's another one where painting, as you can see, brings out so much more. He has this big lump of black plastic on his back with gold stickers on it, but when you paint some of it up to add to the gold stickers and around them, it just makes them look a lot more majestic. Again, the painting really helps. In the case of Ryuki, The painting is not quite as necessary, because a lot of this is stickered in, but the main gains you get from painting him would be that his sword would have some silver on it, because it otherwise just remains red, and you also get to add in all these little black details all over his body, which are not all that necessary, but they help make the red pop just a little bit more, and that generally just helps him look a lot more, again, like a toy that's maybe $2 more than what you actually paid for him. On Kiva, there was a little bit of detail work I did that wasn't in the stickers at all, that actually took a little bit of work, but a lot of what I did was actually on the back, because he's more or less entirely black on the back, and I wanted to add the silver here on the back of his arms and on the back of his collar just to finish the look off a little bit better. A lot of this gold is actually stickered in, and some of the Keyvat parts are stickers themselves, but the main thing I did that I think is worth pointing out, if only to pump my little amateur Gundam markering noob ego, would be on his chest. Those black lines are sculpted there, and they look so good when they're touched up in black. I think that's really the big key points on him to paint, are those black lines, because they are something that really just enhances his look greatly. Their sculpted detail is all there. The only things that aren't really there are things like on the wrists. The stickers offer this kind of inscribed pattern of lines, which I wanted to keep because it's pretty suit accurate, and it's otherwise smooth underneath, but a lot of the sculpted detail is there, and if you're a good painter, these are like a canvas, so really, you'd have fun with them. Like, as you can see here, the Keyvat sculpting is there. The sticker fills it in really nicely, but if you know how to paint, I think you'll really get a kick out of these. Anyway, Decade himself is not a bad toy. With his lack of an alt mode, quote-unquote, he's basically just a posable toy. He's actually called FA, or I believe Full Action Decade. There's a couple of Full Action Kamen Riders I think that have come out in past. It's also the only way to get a posable Kamen Rider Saga, and he's not bad. He's got some fairly basic jointing. He's got fully universal shoulders and elbows, as well as a bicep swivel, a ball-jointed neck, which surprised me, no waist joint, which really should have been there, in my opinion, universal hips and a thigh swivel, double-jointed knees, which was again a nice surprise, and ball-jointed ankles. So he's a pretty nice, posable little package. He also comes with the sword form of the Ride Booker, which is not bad. It looks like what it's supposed to look like. What's interesting is, with the stickers, you get basically one sticker to put over the front of this, so I took the little Decade symbol off of that and put it there. You can also see the really rough, patchworky, garbage paint job I did, but I'm happy with it. And on the figure himself, you can see he's pretty decent looking as far as a Decade goes. The belt there is another sticker that I used. What was nice is the red jewel part I was able to actually indent around the sculpting along with the black bands with a toothpick, and it gives it some texture, which really helps the sticker out. Sadly, he doesn't come with any other weapon, so all you really get is this sword, but given the choice between a sword and the gun, I think the sword is more dynamic looking, and he can, even though he lacks a wrist swivel, he can kind of do his little slide the fingers on the blade pose and cock his head a little bit with the ball-jointed neck. So, Decade turns out pretty well. The cool guy, however, doesn't quite turn out as nice as I'd hoped. He's got a lot of, again, decent sculpted detail, and his legs are extremely posable, in part for the transformation. Just about as posable as Decade's, with a slightly more ambulatory ankle joint. The only downside being he does have these weird little foot knives, although, I mean, you know, in a fight those could be useful. And he's got this stuff on the side here. But, for whatever reason, his head doesn't turn and his shoulders only go up and down. That was a big disappointment to me, especially since they're sculpted slightly out, which I guess does help make him look more dynamic. But he has an elbow and he has a bicep swivel, and he's so close to being, you know, a really nice standalone toy. I was surprised that his shoulders were this limited. Almost a really good standalone toy, but he sacrifices just a bit too much for the transformation. You'll also notice he looks okay now, but if you want to go for the pre-transformation form, you can plug all this stuff on him. One interesting thing to note, by the way, on the Final Form Ride, these are actually put on here on a hinge. Instead of doing a hinge, you actually peg them in like this, and then you peg him in like this. And you give him the massive backpack, and now he's Missile Elbows form Kuga. There's really not much to do in this form. He's still can do stuff, but everything gets in the way of everything, and really, I like how he looks just standing there. His transformation is actually one of the more interesting ones I've seen so far. First, you pretend there's a hinge there. I just was surprised they didn't do some kind of redesign so you just fold these down. But, you know, whatever works. These do cover his hands slightly, which helps with the large amount of suspense of disbelief you need with this transformation. You fold his head back, and you do have to take the backpack off to do that, but it does also mean that his head doesn't show at all. And the lack of outward shoulder swivels on the shoulders, I guess, in part was to help with this transformation so these wouldn't be flailing all over the place. But there's just as much flailing all over the place with the legs here. Once you get them in position, they do move around a lot. It's very easy to get them knocked out of whack. But this is the Kuga Go-Ram! And this does look really cool, at least from this angle. From this angle, it looks like, what is this guy doing? But from here, I do dig it quite a bit. The only problem is, it just kind of rattles. There's no solid way to really put this guy on the ground, and, you know, that's not a big deal since he flies around and whatnot, but for display it can kind of suck, because he does have a peg on there that you can stick Decade onto, so he can ride this little mother, and when you put him on here, and this wobbling happens, he just kind of falls left or right. So you can actually move the legs down a bit to support being in this position. But, you know, I guess the ideal play pattern for this is to just whoosh him around the room. Yeah, it's cool. Riding on the waves in the summertime. Whoa! The Boy Prince, Kamen Rider Kiva. As a standalone toy, he's actually got all the posability that Decade has. He's only got a single-jointed knee, but otherwise he's got all the joints, down to the ball-jointed ankles, the arms. Actually, he is lacking the bicep swivel, so my lack of planning means I do have to knock another point off him. But what he has over his other transforming buddies is he can look around! And neck joints are oh so important, so I gotta give him some big ups there. Sadly, though, his leg doesn't blow open, which I was kind of hoping for. Also, he's got this weird thing on the inside of his leg due to the transformation that you kind of have to ignore, although on the bright side, it does provide him with a lot of great heel support down here. When you want to prepare him to transform, very interesting thing they did is that they made this an entirely separate piece. This is kind of like what his leg looks like during the big awesome wake up rider kick thing. And they do give you some really nice green metallic stickers that fit perfectly over those sculpted bits. The back of this, I just added the silver because it was boring looking otherwise. Now the weird thing is, he's actually designed to hold it like a weird stick. I gotta say, I'm glad they did something with it, but this just looks so weird. Also, you get a giant Kivat, who does look quite nice. And these eyes, by the way, these are the stickers. You just have to take a toothpick and run around these sculpted spiral eyes, and they fit in so well. I love the way this looks. So you stick this dude on his back. We also have a tiny sculpted Kivat here, which is, again, a really excellently done sticker. A lot of the Bandai Mini-Plow stickers, I find, nowadays, they adhere really well when they're pressed with a toothpick over the sculpted detail. It's just so nice. It does so much to enhance the look of the sticker and make it look less like a piece of paper stuck over a toy. To transform this guy, you get this interesting process. Now, I don't actually wholly understand how this works, because there's so much leeway in here, and so many swivels. I'm sure there's some very prescribed swivels, but so many of the this knee, by the way, likes to fall off. There's so many prescribed swivels in here that I kind of just took a few liberties. I mean, it generally has one key idea that you want to do. And by the way, again, like many Final Form Ride forms, when you look at it from one angle, you really wonder what the hell's going on. And it doesn't help that you're going to be ramming this thing up his crotch that you've just split open. But from this side, you get this really cool-looking giant bow and arrow thing, and I love the way that the wings look on this. This actually, from this angle, I gotta say, I really like this. And you get a surprisingly solid handle that you can clip into Decade's hand here. And he actually holds it really solidly. Like, he will not let this go until you actually physically click it like this. It almost snaps in place. Now, that's the upside. The downside is you kind of have to stand him using Kiva's foot that you're not supposed to be looking at. But if you can find some kind of nice version of this pose that works with the bow and arrow kind of balancing him on the ground, then it's a pretty cool accessory. I actually really like just the ludicrous size of this weapon, and it definitely is not something you'd want to look down the barrel of, as you can get the idea of here. And from the dimension of combat lawyers, we have Kamen Rider Ryuki. This one actually turned out to be my overall favorite standalone. Even though Kiva has a lot of the posability, this guy is just, as a little action figure, he turned out really well, in part due to his roots. When you take all the Final Form Ride parts off him, what was a genius idea is that these are basically all of his Advent card powers. And when he's not wearing them, he's basically just Ryuki, with maybe a slight extension on the backpack here. Again, he lacks the bicep swivel, but he does have universal shoulders and hips, single-jointed knee, and ball-jointed ankles. I love the ball-jointed ankles. Sadly, he can only look up, really, or he can go, oh my god! The detail on him, again, he has a very nicely done belt sticker. Just like Kiva's, this one really adheres well over the sculpted detail. And if you get everything lined up right, it generally looks like it's one piece. And they did sculpt on the drag visor. There is sculpted detail up there, but oddly enough, the sculpted detail was not anywhere near as detailed as the sticker, which is actually kind of rare on these. So I went with the sticker on there. But overall, he looks pretty decent. And you can kit him out with all of his advents. He actually has two different hands here, so you can't put them in either hand. Basically, the sword has to go in here. And he can hold the strike vent with a nice peg in the fist. It's nowhere near as complicated as the Sochok Henshin or the R&M setup. I wish that the mouth opened. That was my only disappointment. Because when the mouth is closed, the dragon just looks so docile and unimpressive. And you also get his guard vent, which you can stick onto his shoulders. The only thing is, when you stick him on his shoulders, you can't really bend the elbows that easily without knocking everything off. So when he's all kitted out, he's actually pretty mean looking. To transform him, you do have to pretty much remove everything. Even from the arms, you have to remove these, swivel them around, and then plug them in down here. So that also gives you an alternate way to hold these, more like a shield, which is kind of nice, or like a dragon claw punch attack thing. Sadly, this also means there's a huge hole in the head of the drag visor, so I apologize to its parents. This transformation also involves the classic head sucking back into his spine, and again, splitting the crotch open. This time, you want to actually do that, and this whole sequence here, I'm not exactly sure if there's any solid lock-in way to do it. What you can do here is you can actually plug these, the head and the tail into either end. The upside of the ball-jointed ankles does mean that these ends of the dragon are quite posable. Combined with his leg posability, this is actually a pretty nice little piece of dragon. You can get a lot of, aside from the head falling off, because these pegs they're solid, but they're not, dead solid. You get a lot of posability so long as you don't expect too much out of the midsection, although the shoulder joints here help because it means wherever you put the legs, you can move the dragon parts up to join them. Now, the only thing is that this mode really has no direct interactivity with Decade. Really, it's just Decade can hold the sword. Or, you can have Decade show up and be all like, I'm gonna do the Ryuki Rider kick, and have the dragon behind him, but I wish there was something these two could do together. It's not really in the show, though, so it's just my own personal wishes. I wish this dragon could do a little bit more. So Rider collectors can get an idea of what these guys might look like in a mixed display. I'm going to show you them with a couple of popular Kamen Rider lines. First, this is them when they're standing by the varied sizes of the Sochok Henshin and SH Figarts lines. As you can see, they don't really fit in with them at all. They look kind of like kids wearing Kamen Rider clothes. There are two lines, however, that I'm sure a lot of people are considering as possible display buddies with these candy toys. Motion Revive and SIC Kiwami Tamashii. So here he is with a Kiwami Tamashii figure, and here he is with a Motion Revive figure. And what's interesting is the sizes are almost there with the Motion Revives, but the Motion Revive guys are just a little bit smaller, and that throws things off a teeny tiny bit. Although really it's minuscule. I'm sure in a mixed display you wouldn't really notice. So this does make for a somewhat decent stand-in Motion Revive Decade. Although one does hope they will do Motion Revives in the future. He is a little bit more in scale with the Kiwami Tamashis. The only problem is that the design aesthetics are completely different. So these guys I think would fit in decently if you collected some Motion Revives. I'm sure that these are scaled well to the other full-action Kamen Rider figures from Kiva and the like. So if you want to pick up these toys and you have some Motion Revives, I think that they'll fit in okay with your display. So overall, I've got to say, these are a really nice alternative to the Final Form Ride toys for one main reason. They are a lot less expensive. It's about $40 plus shipping for a box of these. Just around $20 if you split it with someone, maybe under $20 if you get someone interested in singles. I think it's a nice alternative if you are into the candy toy thing. If you don't want to do the extra painted detail, and if the stickers don't do enough detail for you, then you probably will be disappointed with these, but as hopefully you can see, if you add just a little bit of customizer love and care, even with some cheapo Gundam markers, this can turn out to be a pretty cool little set and a nice alternative that doesn't impact your wallet quite as heavy as $25+ per toy can impact your wallet. So I do recommend these if you're ready for the candy toy experience, but if you want stuff that's really pretty right out of the box, then these probably won't do it for you. Along with the somewhat lack of posability here and there, I gotta say mildly recommended, again, only to Kamen Rider fans. I think it turned out pretty well, and I'm actually pretty interested in the second set that's coming out with D-End, Blade, Agito, and I'm cheating, Fies. So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I gotta say thanks again to Keith at Henshin Justice for letting me know about these. I got these from HLJ, so check them out if you want to pick them up. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just a passing-through video reviewer with a bunch of crappy Gundam markers and a Revoltech stand.